Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, December 7th, 2021. I want to first off mention that this is a very special day. It's the 80th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. 80 years ago today was Pearl Harbor, and in honor of that day, Mayor Holt has declared that all flags on city property be lowered on Tuesday, December 7th, starting at 8 o'clock a.m. and ending at 5 o'clock p.m. Some people say that the men and women that fought that war were the greatest generation we've ever known, and I want to thank everyone, their family members, for remembering those people who fought for our country and died. We have the invocation today with Mark DeMoss, and Mark is the Capitol Hill Baptist Church senior minister. He's been with the church since 2005. This is a historic congregation that has been around since 1902. We're very honored to have you here today, Pastor.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity
Please stand.
Pray. Thank you. Father, we come before you today, and as we mark this occasion, already mentioned, God, in remembrance of those who have fought and served for our country, God, we extend gratitude again. We should give honor to whom honor is due, and we know that those men and women then and today that serve our country deserve honor, and we're glad to do that. Father, I thank you for the people that serve our city right here, and they deserve honor as well. We pray for them as they deliberate, make decisions on our behalf. God, we are grateful for what you've done to establish the kind of government we have in our country. Lord, we are indeed grateful for the freedoms we possess and pray, God, for their continuation. We know that, Lord, the Scripture says all authority comes from you. And so you've bestowed authority through the agency of local government, and we are thankful, especially for the fact that, God, as we enter into a holiday season, we understand that you sent a Savior, and the Word says that the government shall rest upon his shoulders. Lord, thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, his freedoms that he gives to us spiritually, and that which has been established through government in our world. May liberty rule and reign. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Next will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Jaden Beals. She is with Girl Scout Troop 299, and I got to meet her and have a photograph with her this morning, and she is a delight. It's your turn.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll now call the meeting to order. This is the Oklahoma City Council meeting of December 7th, 2021. The first item is item number 3 from the Office of Mayor. We will have a resolution recognizing and commending our Teacher of the Month, which is Lauren Querbach. And there will be a presentation, and I will at this time go down to the front for the presentation. Lauren, come on up. We're going to hear from you in a minute, but there will be first a resolution read, and then it will be voted upon. I think it will pass. But I wanted to tell you that this resolution was prepared by the city and will now be read by the city clerk.
Okay.
Amy.
Whereas Lauren Querbach has been named Teacher of the Month for December 2021 by Putnam City Public Schools and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City. Whereas Lauren has been a first grade teacher at Wiley Post Elementary School for 2 years and in the classroom for 8, one of which was in Thailand. And whereas Lauren graduated from the University of Oklahoma with an English degree and volunteered as a reading tutor while there. And whereas Lauren believes wholeheartedly in student-led project-based teaching. And whereas Lauren creates an equitable and joyful classroom for her students that centers on their lives, interests, and experiences. And whereas Lauren's practice of meeting each child where they are led her to assist the administration in creating and implementing a multi-grade skill-based reading program for kids in her school. And whereas Lauren loves reading, cooking, and spending time with her partner Joe and their dog Zoe, exploring the world when she is not in the classroom. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby recognize and commend Lauren Querbach on her selection as December 2021 Teacher of the Month by Putnam City Public Schools and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City.
Congratulations. Now we'll have a motion and a second and a vote. May I have a motion? Do I have a second? All those in favor, please vote yes. Let's see up here if it passes. I vote yes. It passes. Congratulations. Now,
Thank you so much.
a little birdie told me there's a couple of questions I should ask you. Number one, what's the funnest thing about teaching first grade? Number two, tell us about your Addams Family song and how you use that. And number three, tell us about how you design your classroom sometimes as a coffee shop.
Okay, so if you've ever met a first grade, you know that most of the time with them is fun. But personally, my favorite thing about teaching first grade in particular is that it's really focused on teaching students how to read. So they're coming into you ready and primed, and you get to be the person that puts them over that edge. And it is so exciting seeing that joy in their eyes when they finally start to grasp what you're teaching them. So the Addams Family song, typically teachers will use it in their classrooms to teach the days of the week, but I actually stole it and changed it into a song for our word of the day. So that's how we introduce our word of the day each day, and my students can snap or clap. A lot of them just say snap and clap, which is fine. And then for the coffee shop last year, when we were in the height of the pandemic, I was working really hard to make sure we could still have as much fun as possible in a year that was really hard to have fun. So I created a writing curriculum, and we did a poetry unit. And for the big celebration at the end of the poetry unit, I set up my classroom into a poetry cafe, and it was a coffee shop, and they all wore berets and beanies, and we had hot chocolate. And they got up and got to perform poems that they had written during our poetry unit for other staff members in the school. And of course, when it was all over, everyone snapped instead of clapped.
All right, and your superintendent is here today?
Yes.
Would you like to introduce him?
Yes, this is my superintendent, Dr. Fred Rhodes. And I'll just say that I am so grateful to be here, and also so grateful to teach.
Love your enthusiasm. We're all very proud of you. Let's give her another big hand, please. Thanks for coming back. It was fun. The next item on the agenda is from the Office of Mayor. It's appointing Amy Madera to serve as a member of the Oklahoma City Employment Retirement System. I'd entertain a motion at this time. Will it show me it passes?
She's still waiting. Will you ask Cooper how he votes?
Who? Oh, okay. Hey, James, would you mind just doing a voice vote so we can move on? Yeah, Thank you very much. Passes unanimously. We have no items from council today. The next item is item 5 on page 1 of the agenda, and it's the city manager report, so I'll turn it over to the city manager at this time.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. We don't have any presentations today. We do have a couple of items on that are updates on performance measures, on council priorities, and then on our quarterly investment report. So that information's in the packet, and glad to get information for you if you have any questions.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Item 6, Journal of Council Proceedings. There are 2 items here to receive and approve. I can take one motion for items A and B, please. It passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is the request for uncontested continuances. Mr. City Manager.
We have several on today, starting on page 10, item 11E.
Hang on.
Page 10 is item 11E. It's PC 10770, and that's at the applicant's request to defer this to February 15th.
Okay.
And then on page 11, under item 1101, all of these items will be stricken from the agenda. Item C, 16420 Delmar Drive, owner is secured. Item D, 2233 North Gatewood Avenue, the owner is secured. Item H, 1312 Northwest 8th Street, the owner is secured. Item K, 2844 Northwest 13th Street, the owner is secured. Item P, 3229 Southwest 41st Street, the owner is secured. Item F, 420 Southwest 51st Street, the owner is secured. Item S, 2843 Southwest 61st Street, the owner has secured. Item U, 722 Northwest 92nd Street, the owner has secured. And then on page 12, item 11P1, abandoned buildings, all of these are stricken from the agenda. Item A, 16420 Delmar Drive, the owner is secured. Item B, 2233 North Gatewood Avenue, the owner is secured. Item G, 2844 Northwest 13th Street, the owner is secured. Item K, 3229 Southwest 41st, the owner is secured. Item N, 420 Southwest 51st Street, the owner is secured. Item O, 722 Northwest 92nd Street, the owner is secured. And then on page 12, on item 11S1B, this is a claim for denial that's going to be deferred to 12/21.
And that's
Item
1B.
That's
Okay,
right.
thank you.
That's all the items I have.
All right. And do we need a motion for those continuances, or are we good? All right. There are no new revocable permits and events today, so we will recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority, where we find 10 items, including claims and payroll, and I can entertain a motion for all those 10 items.
So we have a presentation on
Okay.
item D.
Okay. Which one?
Item D.
D, as in dog? All right.
Yes.
Are we ready for that at this time?
Yes, sir. So Brent Bryan, our finance director, will present. This is our financial statements that we have. We have the MFA financial statement on, annual financial statement. We have the PPA is on for today. And then also on the council consent docket, we have the city's comprehensive annual financial report. Brent's going to go ahead and present on all of those because they're interrelated at this time, and would take questions on those, and then they'll just appear and be voted when they appear on the agenda.
All right. Good morning, Brent Bryant, Finance Director. We're at the end of a fiscal year, and it always culminates with these 3 reports that we bring to council. It's our MFA report, our PPA report, and as he said, our annual comprehensive financial report. Before I get started, I'd like to recognize our accounting staff who's here today. They're led by Alex Fedak. He's under the weather today, but they're all right here. And I'm going to ask them to stand if it's okay. So would y'all mind standing? So these are the people. We have a great group of people, again, led by Alex Fedak and Assistant Controller Christy Jamison, and they've done a remarkable job this year, and I'm very, very proud of them, and I'm very appreciative of their efforts and how they account for over $1 billion of the city's funds. So with that, I'll get started on MFA. The MFA, our first report is the MFA, and it is where we look at and we manage all of our insurance programs, workers' comp, health insurance, and we also use it for our GO bonds where we do advanced A&E for that. in our IT contracts. The net position for this year increased from $43.8 million to $42.1 million. So one thing that I would tell you is all three of these reports are clean audits. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing materially wrong with these reports. And again, that's a testament to the accounting and working with all the departments. I just wanted to remind you of that. So that the OCPPA provides activities. It's where we track all of our golf courses, and also the stuff related to the State Fair Park. In addition to that, we look at our downtown various bids. We have 6 bids that we monitor through the PPA. Overall, the net position is $61.1 million, which is an increase of about $1.8 million over last year's net position of $59.3. Also within the PPA, with the golf courses is separated out. It actually had a good year with all the pent-up demand for golfing that occurred during the pandemic. They had a remarkable number of rounds this last fiscal year, and it put a dent in their negative net position of $1.3 million. It was 1.9, and it increased $600,000 to only a negative net position of 1.3. The fairgrounds also had a negative net position. It stayed basically flat for the year. And I'll read this here. The negative net position is normal in the PPA fund because it's a vehicle to finance capital. So money comes in and we issue debt and build stuff, and that's the result of that. So it's not a problem with it being in a negative position is my point. So now for the annual comprehensive financial report, this will be on item AL on your consent docket. It's the net position stayed flat at $2.4 billion. Our component units, which are all of our trust, had a $1.9 million net position compared to 1.7 in the prior year. Our assets did increase for the fiscal year 2021. Primarily, we issued over $140 million of GO bonds in FY21, and then we also saw some unprecedented increases in our May and June sales tax. Those were not expected, and they were quite large. So from a fiduciary standpoint, we're going to look at our trusts that are our pension funds, and there was 3 of them: the Oklahoma City Employee Retirement System, the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority pension system, and then our Oklahoma City Post-Employment Benefits Trust. In total, the net position is $1.1 billion compared to $847,000. You've seen how the stock market has done well in the last year, and we have been able to, because a lot of the investments are similar. We invest a lot of that in equities and fixed incomes, and we've been able to garner double-digit returns in the last year, and that's resulted in this better position than the prior year. The retirement system has a net pension asset around 94%, so you could say it's 94% funded, which is really good. And then the OPEB funded position is the 13.9, which had increased a little from 13.2. And as years pass, when we get into decades, that will start to go up as our liability will decline over that. But that's a really slow, steady impact on that. Fund balance. We ended the year at $1.3 billion, which is an increase of about $158 million. The bulk of that came from MAPS 4. We had our first year of MAPS 4, a full year of receipts, and we're just now, with the implementation plan getting approved by you a couple of months ago, we'll start seeing that money deployed in the future. From a GAAP basis, we're at $209 million, which is an increase of $24 million. And then from a budgetary standpoint, which is what we focus on in the finance department, because that's how we pay our bills, the general fund had a $118.1 million fund balance. We were able to add funds to the fund balance at the end of the year of 11.4. Our single audit, which is an audit of all of our grants and federal funds, has not been completed. The federal government has not provided the appropriate documents that are what the requirements are at this point in time, and so we expect that to be complete though by the first quarter of calendar year 2022. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And if you want detailed ones, I have the accountants that can come up here and answer them. I know they love to do that.
Does anybody have any questions? There being none, the one thing I want to thank again is our staff that's here today. What great financial stewards they are. They do a tremendous job, and we appreciate the presentation, Brent.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate Brent's leadership for the finance department, but all the team that we have, we have a lot of different functions in the city that work behind the scenes, and you really don't see them and they don't draw a lot of attention, but I really appreciate the work that they do every day. So it's a great job for us.
Yeah, thank you. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion on the 10 items, which concludes claims and payroll. Please. Trouble in paradise. I can't. Well, wait. There we go. Thank you. I do that all the time. The motion passes. We'll adjourn the OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, where we find 5 items. Are there any presentations on this? Okay, we can take a motion at this time, please. Motion passes. We'll adjourn the OCPPA and we'll convene the council meeting again, which finds us at item 9, which is at the consent docket. We will, at this time, can pull out any items that need to be considered for separate conversation or a separate vote.
And Vice Mayor, we do have presentations on items W and X and then Y and Z.
Everybody get that? W, X, Y, and Z. Thanks for coming today.
Yes, I would like to pull out item G for a separate vote.
Is that B as in boy?
G as in girl.
G as in girl? Okay, just 1 second, please.
She asked for a separate vote on that.
Okay. All right, we got G. Do you have anything else, Jo Beth? Nikki, do you have anything?
Yes, looking for it. I know where it is here. Item AF. AF is in Frank.
Okay, item AF. James, you have anything?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I do. Just briefly, would like to hear an update on item AA.
AA, and that's at page 5, correct?
That is correct. Thank
Okay.
you. And then also item AD.
AD, which
And
is a
then-
change order on Belle Isle?
Yes.
Okay.
And then finally, item AT, as in Tom.
AT's on page 7.
That is correct, and that will be all for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, and then help me out here. Yeah, but I was going to get the
Also, Vice Mayor, AM.
AM.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And then tell me the presentations again, please. I'm so sorry.
They're W, X, and Y, and Z.
W, X, Y, and Z. Great. Okay. So I'm going to start off with G. Is that appropriate?
Yes.
All right.
That was for a separate vote.
Sure. Let's go to item 9G.
Yeah, I asked some questions about this item, which is a pricing agreement essentially to purchase some unknown quantity of rifles and accessories over the next year, with, I think, a possibility of extension to another year. And I asked questions to our Chief Gorley about how many we own, how many we expect to purchase, why we have patrol officers carrying these. I asked for examples of the past 10 times they've been utilized and didn't really get any answers, specifically not about how many we own or something that really concerned me was a line that I got back saying, "We can't quantify a number to you on how often they are utilized or deployed. It is not something we track," which from a just specific inventory management seems like an issue, even more so if they are weapons. So I just would like to vote no on this. I assume everyone else is fine voting yes, so I just wanted to pull it out and vote separately on this one.
Just separate vote. Yep. So she's ready to go.
Well, to her point, I am curious to know why there's not an inventory, at least on these types of weapons or any weapon that we have that I'm sure we mark inventory on. So I think it's quite interesting that we aren't able to quantify or say the number of these particular weapons, and again, who they are being deployed to, and or for the incidents.
So we do have an inventory on the number of rifles that we have. We would have that information. We would also know how many are actually assigned out to employees. I think that the response on the question about uses is that we'll have, anytime a weapon's discharged, there's a record of that. How many times it might have been taken or used within an event, that is what the part that's not tracked. But there is information that's available on that we can get.
Then is it possible, because I would actually like to see that number, for us to defer just this item for now until we can get the number that's being asked for?
Do you have that information now on the, okay, come on up. Sure. Chief needs to grab another a sheet of paper to get that information.
So just so I'm clear, this is a motion that we're going to take up on a separate vote.
It's a motion for a separate vote, and then Nikki had asked about deferral if we didn't have the information. Council will be nice. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. Wade Gorley, Chief of Police.
Good morning.
We currently have 480 patrol rifles, or what we call patrol rifles. Those are assigned to uniform positions. Of that 480, 362 are assigned, which means 117 are not. That's usually because scheduling a school gets kind of difficult, especially this time of year, and so that's why not all of those are assigned. And it is a kind of a complicated process to go through to get a rifle. Not everyone can pass the qualification course, so it's kind of always kind of a moving target in that.
So what do we, I guess I'm just curious, so it sounds like we feel like we need to buy more potentially, or at least accessories for those rifles. Is there a reason we don't have a specific understanding of like an amount that we might buy over the next year, or what is the procedure for purchasing new ones?
Rifles are like anything else, have a shelf life. Sure. They only last for so long. Some of our rifles are coming up on 15 years old. I think we're about a year from that. So it all depends on, do those rifles start requiring too much maintenance? Are they not safe to keep out on patrol anymore? And so that's why that number, we don't really know. It just kind of depends on what happens. Sometimes you have a malfunction in one that could cause the rifle to be inoperable, and then it has to be replaced. So that's mostly what we're looking at with this, is we don't know how many we'll buy because we don't know how many will reach the end of their life.
And what happens when one reaches the end of its life? What do we do with it?
We have a couple of options. We can trade them in back to the manufacturer, and they usually, they can refurbish them and take parts and things from them for older rifles. In a lot of cases, if the rifles are just worn out and they really don't serve any purpose anymore, we'll destroy them.
Okay. Appreciate the information. I just am still unconvinced that city police departments need rifles like this, especially to carry just on patrol. So I'd still like to do a separate vote on it, but I do appreciate the information.
Just to make sure I heard you, you're talking about a shelf life, and what we're focused on is safety and maintenance, and especially maintenance costs for older rifles, correct?
Yes, and that's what makes that fluid, because we don't know what parts on the rifles are going to break. We don't know if, a part on there could be something catastrophic that makes the rifle inoperable anymore, to where, we have to replace it. So that's why we budget an amount to handle that. Oftentimes we don't even spend all of that amount, but we just want to have that there to be prepared.
And this isn't unlike other pricing agreements that we have. We have many different items that we'll purchase, that we have pricing agreements. We don't know exactly how much we will purchase at any one time, but we set the pricing agreement so that we can make purchases as they're needed. And this does both guns and parts, right?
Correct.
So if there's no other discussion.
I
I'm
guess
sorry.
my question is, because I'm seeing we have 480, 362 assigned, 117 not assigned. What happens with the ones that aren't assigned? For the ones that are assigned, if something should happen as far as malfunction or there needs to be some repair, that means the 117 goes from that number to the assigned. Is that correct?
It's possible to do that we could assign some of those, and some of those in that 117 may be getting close to their shelf life as well. Again, this just allows us the opportunity to be able to maintain that inventory and adjust as needed. It doesn't mean that we're going to buy $200,000 worth of rifles.
In order for me to feel comfortable with this vote, I would like for us to make sure anytime we are purchasing one of these rifles, that we receive at least that information for us to have that type of inventory as well, because it's not enough, and to the point of Councilwoman Hammond asking a question and we couldn't get an answer yesterday, as far as, a very vague answer, should I say, and now today we have a number. There's a way to still continue to keep inventory of this, and I think it's necessary for us to make sure and ensure that we are also looking at the costs, what that looks like, as well as, again, the cost of these rifles and the maintenance that it costs for such rifles as well, because I'm of the mindset as well. I understand we have to have protection, but with us to have 117 just kind of sitting around and waiting in the wing to be used, I would like to know when and where we're purchasing more in the effort to replace 117 that could probably still be used.
If I could, on that 117, our plans are to run schools and issue those out. We don't want those sitting in our safe. We want them utilized. What happens is we've had a lot of retirements over the last couple of years, and scheduling those schools around staffing becomes more difficult when you're shorter staffed. And so our plan is with that 117, again, we can use it if a rifle malfunctions and is no longer serviceable. We can use one of those to issue, but our goal is to get as many of those out in service as possible, and that's what we'll do. And we have schools that we schedule, and a lot of it depends on, just, again, staffing and other availability to get those schools going.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. I've got just a quick question. So,
Yes, sir.
just to be clear on this doesn't mean you're buying more rifles, but it does mean that in the case that we would need more rifles due to malfunctions or out of shelf life, that you would have the ability to purchase those, right? For the safety of city employees as well as citizens, right?
Correct, and I did check with my range master this morning, and we do have quite a few rifles that are reaching about the 14-year mark. He said that he believes 15 years is about the life on those rifles. So we're getting into a point to where some of those will have to be replaced. It doesn't mean they'll have to be replaced that day that they become 15 years old. We'll probably have some we can swap around and do some things with, but especially right now, it's very difficult to get ammo. It's very difficult to get parts, so we have to stay a little bit ahead of the game to make sure we don't fall behind.
Thank you.
Chief, would you mind, this this conversation is reminding me of the different types of items that we're using, or we're starting to, excuse me, transition toward in a lot of respects. Would this be an appropriate time for you to address like what some of those different, like in lieu of a rifle or in lieu of certain guns? I'm thinking about when we went on our reality-based police training last week, there was some discussion about certain new technology that we're using. Would you mind, is this an appropriate time to discuss that?
So like the less lethal?
The less lethal, thank you. I was trying to find the language, I appreciate that.
Correct. This is different from a
Yes,
less lethal option.
it is.
But we are, and I believe it was on, it's been on like, I think either the last council meeting or maybe one before, to purchase those. I think you're talking about the 40 millimeter less lethal. We are trying to increase those. It's a better option for officers. It allows them more standoff distance to, increase the opportunity for them not to go to a lethal option. And so we are purchasing more of those and in the process, and you saw those in use in our training and our scenario-based training. Also our tasers, our new tasers have a little bit better range, a little bit better at penetrating through clothing and other things, which sometimes is a limitation. But our goal is to get as much less lethal out there, which we don't have enough right now. We've got beanbag shotguns, we've got a few 40 millimeters, and we've got even more tasers, but not everybody has those. So our goal is to get as much less lethal options out there to keep us from having to go to the lethal options.
On that note, and I really appreciate that description, when, again, as appropriate as you can describe this, so when then would something like the rifle become something rather than these options? Because like the thing we learned when we were out there, and I'm saying things of course you already know, but when we were out there for the reality-based training, that distance that you were describing, right, to your point, Councilman Stone, right, it provides further safety for the officer because of the distance from whomever, and ultimately maybe the person who the officer is encountering might also leave with their life, so there's this sort of safety there. So I'm just curious, genuinely curious, like when do you imagine the scenario where that evolves from the less lethal to something like this rifle? Because I'm picking up on like, I think the concern, right, is we're moving toward these less lethal things that keep both the officer and the citizen safe. So how antiquated then does this rifle approach? I guess it's kind of my question, and it's like a genuine question. I don't know that answer.
Think of it like a toolbox. If you got a toolbox and all you have in it is a screwdriver, at some point you're going to need a hammer. You might need a pair of pliers, something like that. So all of these things are tools that allow us more options, and distance is our greatest friend because that creates time. It allows you reaction time. I cited a couple of examples when I answered the email questions that I got on the rifles. We had an officer last summer that was just patrolling in the area of Martin Luther King Boulevard, and a vehicle just starts ramming his vehicle, ends up causing enough damage to where he's pinned and trapped in the vehicle. The subject gets out of his vehicle and starts shooting at the police car and is approaching it, but the officer's pinned in the car. He can't get to his sidearm, yet he's being shot at and taking gunfire. So luckily he had a rifle in the car. He was able to pull that rifle out and defend himself. So in that circumstances, less lethal would not have been an option because he's taken lethal fire. The same thing, and one of the reasons that we actually upped our rifle program back in 2016 was because of the incident that happened in Dallas where 5 police officers were killed by an individual that was armed with a rifle, and all the officers had were handguns. They couldn't successfully defend themselves against someone with a rifle because that person can shoot from greater distances than a person with a handgun. So it's just looking at having those things available depending on the situation. We always want to use less lethal, but there's going to be times when lethal is going to be the only response or the best response to that in order to save lives.
Thank you, Chief.
You bet.
I'm curious, in that specific instance, so where are rifles stored in a car? Like why was this officer not able to get to their handgun but was able to get to a rifle?
The damage to the car had pinned him in the vehicle in a certain way to where he couldn't get his gun out. It's hard to even draw your weapon seated in a car with everything in a perfect environment. But the rifles, we have mounts, in the car that secure the rifle in place. They lock, and he was able to get to that. It's usually right behind the officer on the screen, on the protective screen. But also, if they don't have a mount in the car, they have to store it in their trunk. It has to be somewhere where it's locked and secured.
Okay, and then I guess my final question is, so when do we expect that we will prioritize purchasing more less lethal options?
We're doing that right now. We're already in the process of purchasing 40 millimeters, and like I said, I believe that went before council either last meeting or meeting before, and we're in the process of doing that right now.
Okay, thank you.
So we have had a request to vote on 9G separately, and I would entertain a motion and a second at this time. This vote is to approve 9G. It passes 6-2. We're still on the consent docket.
Thank you.
We have some presentations that the city manager mentioned at the beginning, and I think we're at page 5, 9W. I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, Robbie Kinzel is here with us, and she's going to make a quick presentation on W and X. We'll just go ahead and let her stay up and cover both of those items.
Good morning, Robbie. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to present this morning. So the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs was created in 2012 in the city's budget, and there were three primary responsibilities that I want to explain. Carrying out the 1% for our ordinance for buildings and parks. The other one was managing the Arts Commission docket and working with the Arts Commission on their plans and studies, carrying those out. But then the third one was a very important one because the city had had a lot of complaints, and that was helping the private sector navigate code. Development code is certainly written for buildings and parks and other things, but a lot of people might want to have public art projects placed on either right-of-way or at city parks or other buildings, and so having a one-stop shop to visit became an important part of the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs responsibility. And so on item W, this is something that downtown Oklahoma City does annually. They do a call for projects. And for the last 2 years, they've partnered with the Urban Land Institute that many of you know as ULI, and they've done a series of micro grants that they award to artists. And these are using smaller amounts, like between $500 and $3,000. This year, one of those micro grants that was awarded was to two artists, Angie LaPaglia and Kiona Millirons, who both are here today. I'm going to ask them to stand just to recognize them in case you have any other questions specifically for them. But they proposed a project outside of the downtown library. So when this comes to our office, we look at who is the owning department, what are the policies and procedures, legal avenues, the code. And in this case, because it's on a public right-of-way sidewalk, I work directly with Public Works and Eric Winger. So the things we look at are what are the codes that we need to pay attention to, how can we get it reviewed and permitted. Also, though, how does the application proposed impact the site, and what is its removal options? Because these are often very temporary projects that downtown Oklahoma City funds because they want them to appear and go away, because this is what creates interest. And so in this particular case, the original proposal was for a painted mural directly on the sidewalk. That felt a little uncomfortable when we were working with the stormwater folks because of the way it would be removed and how that might be kind of damaging to the environment. So then we looked at what does Embark do. You know, Embark does these heat-applied decals to the sidewalk for parking information. And so we went back and negotiated that with the artists, and the artists loved it because that was a product that they did not know about, and it allowed them greater flexibility with the design. And so here you can see they originally had a circle that was going to be directly painted on the sidewalk. They were able to go back and redesign, and it's now a square with a circle in between, but it has a lot more design detail from the graphic design. So we wanted you to see that. The other reason why we're bringing this to council, we would normally not bring this to council because it would be just a very small project for a short period of time. But because of this new product that they're going to be using, they would like to leave it in place for a year. So that then warranted us to bring it to council to make sure that that was an okay time period. What we've specified in the public art installation and maintenance agreement is that there would be a monthly check on the site to make sure it's not deteriorating. And if it is deteriorating, both the artists and downtown Oklahoma City have guaranteed removal within 30 days. And then we also, too, make sure, since the library is operated by the Metropolitan Library System, they're in total support, and we have that in writing for this. The vendor that will actually apply this to the sidewalk will be the group responsible for providing the city with the required insurance as well. And so if there are no questions on this, I'd like to move forward then to X. So this is something that the city has never done.
One question about W.
Yes.
No. I want to remind everybody, and you can do it better than I do, but USA Today found us to be the #1 city for outdoor artwork and murals. Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, it was quite a surprise, I think, to all of us because it kind of appeared. It shows you what 9 years of work can do. You know, both with the public investing in public art and the private sector's response to that stimulation. We certainly have a lot of artists now that have opportunities that did not have opportunities to do that before. So
maybe now we can become the #1 city for sidewalk murals.
There you go. We're on our way.
Thank you.
So the next one, as I was saying, this is one that we've never done before. You know, typically you see works on loan to museums. And so now that we have several public facilities under the MAPS 3 program that will be viewed by people from all over the world when they visit Oklahoma City. One of our local artists, Wayne Coyne, saw an opportunity for a painting that he actually made with Damien Hirst, internationally acclaimed artist Damien Hirst, who is known for his spin paintings as well as several other art forms. And this was something made several decades ago, but it's a very difficult painting to display because it's an 18-foot square. And just imagine, there's not a lot of homes or offices built with 18-foot square office walls available to that. So we were contacted when the MAPS 3 Oklahoma City Convention Center was under construction about, you know, would there be a place at the city that could be considered for this? Worked with the architects for the convention center and identified several walls, but also we were working with the selection committee at the time for the 1% art for artwork that ended up being the Susan Nardoli piece that's in both the north and the south atriums. The selection committee asked that we delay any consideration of this until those pieces were installed. So we respected that. We came back to the selection committee later and they've reviewed this and they recommended it to the Arts Commission and then again to City Council for a work on loan. The terms proposed are for a period of 10 years. The city would ensure upon receipt. If this is approved by council today, we hope to take receipt of this on Friday. It will begin stretching immediately because this has to be stretched on canvas at such a large size for a period of 30 days. And the operator of the convention center has already set that aside. And at this point, Wayne Coyne would love for this to be in place by his birthday on January 13th, which we think we can do. It would be a major celebration. And we're also hoping that this international artist, Damien Hirst, might visit Oklahoma City at some point to see the work in the convention center. I wanted to show you the site that we've identified on the second floor in the south. And here you can see Al Rojas, who is on the operations team, standing there. He helped select this site. One of the things that in risk management, working with our insurance provider on this piece, that they have requested is we might be moving it about 6 feet up higher just to ensure a greater distance, which the art handler doesn't think there's any problem with. So that's the one thing we're seeking to finalize before we have the insurance in place for this, if council approves it. And so with that, I'd love to answer any other questions you might have. This would be automatically renewed if all parties agreed to that. If Mr. Coyne wanted to remove it early, of course, he would be responsible for all costs. For the city to receive it, we have reserved 1% for art funds to actually be able to receive it, stretch it, do all the art handling and equipment and special cleats and things required to install the work. So.
Any questions? Thank you, Robbie.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Next, we have items X and Y, I think.
Yes, that's correct. Donna Cervantes is here with the Planning Department. She's just going to get, this is just first items. You know, we'll have several items come through. This is a renewal on this bid. And I'll just let Donna present the information.
Thank you. Good morning. This is the 7th year for the Adventure District bid to be requesting renewal of their business improvement district. Their assessment roll this year is just over $200,000. They have been working the past year on continuation of their strategic plan, and they did 2 marketing studies, one in the spring and summer, to really reach out regionally and see the impact of the marketing, make sure they're on track, and really try to reach a broader audience that brought very good success and results to the marketing that I know they'll be using in the future. And they have also embarked on a new wayfinding plan that you'll see. They're just in the first phase, designing for new signage in the district, and will really have an impact there. Again, this is the first meeting to introduce the public hearing, which will be held January 4th. And at that time, you'll be able to hear from the director as well as any from the public who might have comments. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to brag on the Adventure District for a second before they come and give their comments later on. Being a part of the conversations as far as the sprints and the strategic planning, we all know and realize the importance of the Adventure District with the zoo, the Firefighters Museum, the Softball Hall of Fame, all of these special pieces, yet we still need some more adventure as far as to capture and keep people in the area. They come and then they leave. So I'm very grateful that the folks from the Adventure District are working on that process and that plan to ensure that we keep those dollars within our city, because it's easy to get on the highway and go other places instead of keeping those dollars right where they can capture and make our city better in those same places as well. And artwork that has been installed that we've all approved and looked at for the Hall of Fame, and also for the wayfinding, and that little trail that's going to now connect from Remington Park to the Hall of Fame for people to actually feel safer as they walk when we have those tournaments. So great things are happening in the Adventure District, and one of the things I definitely want to brag about is the fact that being on the Zoo Trust, we understand and learn that 1 out of every 4 visitors is from outside of Oklahoma. So just take that in. And we're about to hit about 1 million visitors for this year at the zoo. 1 million people. So that means there's still a lot of great things and great work that can happen in Adventure District. So I'm very grateful for the leadership and all of the hands that are a part of what's happening there as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Donna, thanks for a good presentation. Item AA, Ward 2.
Yes, I was just looking to share with residents an update, because this is a big project that's going to super span some years. In fact, yeah, sorry, that's a little dad joke for you. But yeah, I just wanted to hear from Eric on this project and the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Councilman. Eric Winger, Public Works Director. Item AA is the plans and specifications for advertising repairs that are necessary to our super span drainage structure. This is a very large structure that's near Penn Square Mall. It actually begins just southeast of Penn Square Mall and traverses east underground and discharges near I-44 and Western. So it helps drain a large area that's under I-44 in the Penn Square Mall area. It was originally built in 1971. So it has aged. It's 50 years old. We did do some major improvements to it in 1985 and again in 1995, and so it's due for repairs. It has some internal components with some tensioning rods. It has some exposed reinforced concrete that needs to be patched. It has a number of things that just need to be addressed. It's about $1.4 million in repairs, and we're going to take bids on December 29th. Welcome.
Next, we have item 9AD, Ward 2.
Just a little bit west up Northwest Expressway, we find ourselves at Belle Isle Library. Eric, take it away.
Well, thank you. No, work is actually proceeding very quickly on the Belle Isle Library, so if you've been on Northwest Expressway, you see a lot of the site work that's underway. This is a 2017 bond project. It was originally about a 20,000 square foot library that we're actually expanding by an additional 11,000 feet, so it's going to be 31,000 feet when it's finished. This is a change order 6 and amendment number 1, and it's to actually provide for additional changes to some of the glass that's interior to the building. So as with a lot of remodels, there's been a lot of things that we just had to do during construction, some things that were just unforeseen, and this is one of those items. We're also adding 50 days to account for the additional glass that's being added, but we're on track for a completion at the end of January, so we're getting very close to being able to reopen the library soon.
That's wonderful. We receive emails to our office about this project, and people are very excited. One of the emails asked about the intersection as well. I know there's some pedestrian improvements. Will those also be around that same January completion date, or do those come later? Or what's the anticipation on that?
So they're at the intersection of Northwest Expressway where the library is located. There are actually site improvements that are being included with sidewalks and accessibility that are around the library itself, but we do have some intersection improvements with some crosswalk enhancements that are also planned. They're on a similar timeline, and we're trying to coordinate those the best with the opening as possible, but they could be a little bit different. But there is work planned at the intersection to make it a safer crossing.
That's just wonderful. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
The next item is 9AF, Ward 7.
Yeah, you might as well come on back up here. I received a list of the improvements as far as the sidewalks and that are complete. So I guess really my question that I have is, because this is the final acceptance, how long do we have if there are still some areas of concern or areas where we could still maybe do some work or miss the spot?
So on this particular item, at least for this project, this would complete this project for this specific area as it relates to the work that was planned. So there, as a part of the 2017 bond, there's not additional funding for this specific area. However, all the work that is shown on this item is work that's east of Lottie Avenue. So the area that was included for the sidewalk improvements was Martin Luther King to Lottie, Northeast 8th to Northeast 23rd. We're able to construct a little over 2 miles of sidewalk in that area at about 8 or 9 different locations. But there's a second project that's also planned, and that's work west of Lottie. So we have another project that's actually coming to the City Council at your next meeting to accept a number of additional sidewalks that are in that same area, but it was a separate project. Once it's complete, we'll have exhausted the funding source for that project as well. So new projects would just require new funding sources.
Well, I'm not asking for a new project. I'm asking for, in case, folks reach out and say, hey, they missed the spot on my sidewalk. And I know we also go back and look at these improvements, but at the same time, we still have residents who have concerns with maybe something that had been done on their property in relation to those sidewalks. So my question is, not to say buyer's remorse, but how long is that warranty, should I say, that we can come back and say, we need this fixed, or can you look at this again, or how can we make sure this has been improved if we have some residents that are not completely satisfied with what has taken place?
So with the work that was just done, we have a 2-year maintenance bond.
Thank you.
So if you receive any concerns or complaints, please forward those to me, and we'll be happy to address those with the property owners.
That's what I needed. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
AM. I think that was raised by you, Counselor Nice. AM.
Which one? Sorry.
AM, please, on page 6, 9, AM.
Oh, AM. Thank you. Give me just a second.
You with me?
Yes, we're with you. We're working on something else too at the same time. This is something for, I wanted to see if David Todd, if you don't mind, because it's complicated, but it's not. But I wanted to be explained publicly so people understand what is happening as far as this process is concerned. I know on the MAPS 3 advisory part, we voted on that, but there's still a MAPS 4 part to this. So I just want to make sure people know and understand what this process is going to be. Thank you.
David Todd, MAPS Program Manager. So what comes to you today is a new contract, but it's essentially a contract amendment. This project is for the Coliseum at the fairgrounds. It's got a lot of funding sources in it. This is coming from MAPS 3 that was allocated to do the design piece of it, and there's a little piece that we're able to squeeze into some construction. But what we're looking at right now is just design. This contract is to extend the fixed limit of construction from $73 million to $84 million, and it's to compensate the architects for the additional work that will be there. The reason why we have a new contract instead of just an amendment is because it started in Public Works and with another architect even. And all of the different amendments that were in it, and the contract was very convoluted and very confusing, and all the parties agreed that we should just come up with a new contract that got rid of the Public Works and the PPA and the other architects. So now it's just a clean contract that has Populous in it. So this is the first part of that. It is a MAPS 4 project, so as soon as we finish the final plans on this, it will be essentially handed over to the MAPS 4 advisory board and subcommittee at that point for construction, and will be taken from there. Does that help?
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
The next item on the consent docket is found at page 7, and it's 9AT, please. And I think that was your request, James.
It was. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
You're welcome.
I think we get to hear from David Todd again. Perhaps he and Eric Winger can do a primetime TV show for us. Call it, I don't know, Parks and Recreation, but Public Works and MAPS 4.
A variety show.
Yeah, that was a joke right on the fly, too. Right on the fly. What my best one. We'll get there. David, would you mind just discussing, I'm trying to think of the best way to do this, would you mind just sharing with folk what you and I discussed yesterday morning in terms of what we're going to do to address adverse childhood experiences and mental health with our MAPS 4 youth centers, what we're going to do to address that in this stage in the process, please?
Right, so this is an RFP for the youth centers. It's in its usual form of how we've done this. Councilman Cooper brought up the adverse child experiences that we will question the proposer about. We will prepare an addendum that kind of outlines what's expected in those. It's not a focus, but it is certainly an important component of what the youth centers will be there for, one of many components in there. So we will be issuing an addendum to this document. I want to go ahead and get this rolling, and we often do addendums to clarify questions and different pieces, but we will do that addendum to address Councilman's concerns.
Thank you, and I'll look forward to reviewing that language with you. And David, I just really want to thank you a lot for taking time out of your Monday morning to meet with me to discuss.
Oh, absolutely. We need to get these things right.
Oh, thank you.
You know, the one thing I'd say is that this RFP, and I mentioned this with the MAPS 4 committee, the work dates back to circa 2017 with Tim McLaughlin and Peter DeLisi, and a lot of the program was based upon a project that came out of Iceland. And so a lot of people have worked on this and worked hard and diligent to make this become a reality, but we can always make it better, and that's exciting to try to always build upon something and make it even better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually do have a few questions about this item as well. So I know that our Parks Department the city has recreational centers that are operated by private partners, and I've received concerns, complaints, expressions of frustration about not necessarily how they're operated as far as, respect for the community or responsibility or anything, but hours of operation, and just the types of programming that happen in those recreational facilities that the city and from my understanding, the Parks Department has really no control over because of the way that those agreements were written. It's just sort of the operator gets to kind of do what they want in that space, and there's just not a lot of oversight for this public asset. And I guess part of my curiosity is if there is opportunity for, say, the Parks and Rec Department to be the operator, and if we're already intending for the operator to be partnering with different organizations or services that could kind of be under that, in that space based on what the need of that specific area is or desire of that specific area is. I just wonder, is there an opportunity for the Parks and Rec Department to do that? If so, my best assumption is that cost is a concern. Have we looked at what the cost of the city being the overall operator and then working with partners to maybe supplement operational costs? Like, I guess a lot of my concern just comes with the other piece is the accessibility of those recreational programs. They usually come with a dollar amount that a lot of families maybe can't afford, or they have to go through some kind of scholarship process, which don't get me started on how that can be difficult for people to want to pursue. So I guess my curiosity is, could the Parks and Rec Department be the operator and then be that sort of convener of the different services that might be placed and programming that might be placed in a specific youth center?
I'm not going to speak for Parks and Rec, but I don't see any reason why they couldn't. These are all things that we'll look at as we interview the proposers. One of the things that's in the resolution, it maps in a lot of different areas, is measurable benchmarks. We'll be able to see how it goes and make adjustments. I would assume that the agreement with the operator would be written in such a manner that they have to respond to declining benchmarks. It's all wide open.
Yeah, so in the resolution of intent, we intended that we would have an operator, and the idea is to try to, maximize, we want to maximize the use of the facility and the operators that can be in there, but also manage it as financially feasible as possible. I think definitely we'll be evaluating this with Melinda as we look at these as to whether we have an operator that Parks works with and has some programming in there as well, or if Parks were actually with the operator, that could be a consideration. So we'll be looking at all of those as we look at the proposals.
Okay,
and there are investment funds also.
And there are investment funds that would help with scholarships or additional assistance with funding.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
I do have just some additional remarks on this topic. It's something I've discussed from this horseshoe previously. I just want to emphasize it at this moment why it's so important that we do our best to get this right. I pulled up an article from Oklahoma Watch where if you were to look at the average adverse childhood experience score among incarcerated Oklahoma women, it's 5.75. What that means is, and I would encourage you, as I did last week, to Google adverse childhood experience quiz. It's 10 questions, just 10. and answer them. And it's questions about food insecurity in the home, emotional or physical abuse in the home. You name it, there's a list. And it's a quick quiz. And we have found that, and this is from Oklahoma Watch, those with a score of 3 or higher face an elevated risk of psychological or medical problems. So it's not just mental health, it's obesity, it's heart disease, it's all kinds of health outcomes as an adult that so often as adults we find ourselves going, how did this happen to me? Why am I like this? And it turns out the cake was baked in our childhood. And so then when you look at these numbers for incarcerated women and you see that the average score for them when they take that quiz is a 5.75, that means somewhere between 5 and 7 of those traumas, they clicked yes, 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 right? Oklahoma itself, we are number one of all 50 states for adverse childhood experience traumas. Number one. That means, think about that, y'all. That means when we're walking, that means in this room. That means when we're walking outside on our sidewalks, when we're at the mall, the bus, in traffic, we are surrounded by people who have experienced traumas. And then if you go further in this article, here's the next thing it says, and I'm just going to quote now. Carly Dunn, an Oklahoma State University research assistant whose work focuses on health outcomes in marginalized communities, said counseling or other mental health interventions are the most effective in treating childhood trauma. So there's the answer. But many Oklahomans, especially those in our rural areas, but not limited to, face significant barriers to mental health care, right? And then when you go further and you look at this, while Corrections Department funding has steadily increased over the past 5 years, this is from August of this year, state mental health providers have had to scale back services like individual therapy sessions. So if the solution is access to mental health care, our state government has gotten it precisely backwards. We're increasing funding for them at the end once the human has committed the criminal act. We're not doing these upfront investments like what we heard Mr. Todd describe, the investments in our mental health care in these youth centers. It is just so pivotal that we get it right at this level. And that's why I reached out to Mr. Todd to make sure that as we send out this request for proposals of whoever's going to operate these youth centers, that we prioritize mental health within this request of whoever's going to operate this. Because for people who are listening in this room or at home right now going, who cares, what do we do? Well, hopefully that's not your response to what I just said. But if you're afraid of crime in your neighborhood, then this issue matters to you. Because the person who's committing the crime in your neighborhood has a backstory, and you just heard it. The person experiencing homelessness, which I do not associate with crime, but the person who is experiencing homelessness, if that's an issue you're emailing your council person about, then this backstory matters to you. It all comes back to our children, and it all comes back to their experiences. And again, I can't stress enough that in our state, we are number one with our kiddos experiencing these traumatic experiences. This should be a priority on all of our minds. It's such a priority for me, I quit my job to run for this seat, to make sure those youth centers are in MAPS 4. And they are. And now we can do this work together. And I do appreciate anybody who's been an advocate for them. And I also appreciate you listening to me talk about this a little bit at length this morning, because it's just that important. And the only final thing I will say is that that's why it's so hard for me as a council person to have more lethal options facing a resident who's committed a crime, because I know that was a child at one point who we as a state, as an elected official, we let down. In fact, when you read this article, this is the conclusion for me. There's a young woman named Gina Ritchie who spent 2 decades in and out of Oklahoma prison on drug-related charges. And she said she wanted lawmakers to make addressing childhood trauma a priority. While incarcerated, Ritchie said 3 of her children developed many of the same mental health issues she suffers from. And her middle daughter took her life last year. And she says, quote, "I hope that we can get to a place where people with mental health disorders or substance abuse disorders don't get sent to prison for their condition." So I find it is my absolute responsibility as one of those lawmakers at the local level to do as she's asked us to do. So thank you.
Thank you. We do not have any other items that were pulled for individual consideration. The one thing I would note, City Manager, is that we are approving a lease with COTPA that will not expire until 2066. And I don't know if you and I will be around for that one when we renew it.
I'm not expecting that.
So I'd entertain a motion and a second at this time. On to at page 8, item 10, the concurrence docket. We find 9 items that we can take with one motion. Yes.
I just, as a separate vote, if we could, please.
Item what now?
The Boulevard Place.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. No discussion. I think we've had discussion on it. Save your times.
All right, this time I'd entertain a motion to vote separately on the concurrence docket item I. That item passes 6-2. I would now entertain a motion and a second for the remaining 8 items on the concurrence docket to be approved.
I'm sorry. I thought you said that vote was to vote 2 votes separately.
That was on the separate vote, on that item.
You asked to vote on, you requested that it be
I
voted on
requested to
separately.
vote separately,
And that's what we did.
but I just asked clarifying language where you said this was a vote to pull it out.
No, it was not.
I wanted to vote. I don't want. I thought I was very clear on what I just said, and then I clarified to you.
It's just like we did on the consent docket. We had a request to vote on something
Yeah,
separately.
Did you vote yes on that?
Yeah, because I was voting to pull it out, but I don't want to vote for it.
Do you want to go through the exercise of a motion to reconsider?
Yeah,
and
that'd be
revote it?
great. Thank you.
Okay, would you make a motion and a second, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion in a second.
I'm sorry about that if I created
You're
that
fine.
confusion.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Mark.
Now we have to rescind the vote.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your vote, please. The motion passes. We will now again vote on the concurrence docket, item I. Please give me a motion and a second. Cast your votes. The item passes 5-3.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we now find ourselves at page 10 of the agenda, item 11, items requiring separate votes. I thought we did. All right, let's back up. So we need to vote the remaining items on the concurrence docket, so I'd entertain a motion in a second. Sorry about that. Thanks for your help. It passes. Now we can go to item 11, which is items requiring separate votes. The first one is item 11A, which is an ordinance on final hearing to rezone 9213 South Sooner Road. Councilman Todd?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Has anyone signed up to speak on this item?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and hear from them first, please?
All right, and who is it? Okay, we have Mr. Joy Reardon would like to speak. Okay, he's going to pass. All right, back. I'm sorry, I apologize. Next.
Is that it?
Back to you, yes.
Okay, thank you. This is really just a continuation of a small piece of property that'll go from AA down to Neighborhood Commercial District along the frontage of South Center Road. It was recommended for approval by staff with unanimous approval from the Planning Commission. So with that, I would move for its approval.
There's a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. It passes. We'll now move to item 11B, which is an ordinance on final hearing. This is Councilor Young, please.
Has anyone signed up to speak?
What?
Has anyone signed up to speak?
Joy, did you want to speak on this item? Did I get that? All right, all right. Please come forward. Thank you. No, take your time.
Joy Reardon, 125 Northwest 9th. I live downtown. But what has me concerned is this, if we put more houses in this area, how is it going to affect, in the area, the city went in and bought out a bunch of properties in the area because of the inbound flights and stuff for the runway. How will this affect that? Meaning that if we keep putting, we're taking steps back from where the city spent all that money to go forward because of the noise ordinance of where planes go in and out of the airport, because it's actually right in the flight line of the 32 left.
So residential development is allowed in this area, and this is consistent with the comp plan.
Okay, that's what I was wondering is because...
Yeah, it is. Yes, sir. Ma'am. Sorry.
That was my only concern, was the fact that it's actually right in the flight line of 32 left. They went in and bought all those houses out of lower down of 44th Street. They started moving back up because people were complaining because of the planes and stuff. I lived growing up over on 19th Street. I could hear the airport plain as day from there. It's just a concern.
Okay.
Thank you.
We appreciate your concern. Thank you. Councilor Young?
Well, I, for one, am really excited about Habitat for Humanity building 2 affordable homes in this area and the opportunity that presents to some of our citizens. With no protest at planning, with that, I make a motion to approve.
Okay. We have a motion. Need a second? You're fast.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. And it passes. We'll now move on to item 11C, which is an ordinance on final hearing to rezone 14700 North Sarah Road. That is in my ward. I can tell you it came in front of the Planning Commission. There were no protests. It passed unanimously, and so I would move for this item's approval at this time. Okay, hang on just one second. Joy, do you want to speak on this one? Go, okay, thank you.
My biggest thing is, if we're going to go back from residential to agriculture, I'm good.
That's what we're doing. Okay. It passes. We'll now move on to item 11D, which is another ordinance on final hearing to rezone 2601 South Sarah Road. This is in Ward 3.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Has anyone signed up to speak?
Joy does not want to speak.
Okay. Having no protests at planning, I'll make a motion to approve.
We've got a motion. Could we have a second, please? It passes. Nothing needs to be done with item E, so we'll move on to item F, which is a resolution receiving an amendment to the comprehensive plan. Ward 7?
Yes, I understand there's going to be a presentation for this particular item, and then I'll reserve my questions and comments afterwards. I'm not sure if anyone is signed up to speak otherwise. Okay, thank you.
Morning.
Good morning. Jeff Butler, Planning Director. I have a few slides to introduce this to the council. This is our 10th amendment to the comprehensive plan this year. And it's located on Hefner Road and Kelly Avenue. And it's associated with PUD 1841 coming up. As you can see on this map, there is some development nearby. This was associated with with another recent change. So you can see on this map that pink area. It's about 20 acres on the corner. Recently, the entire quarter section just to the southwest, immediately adjacent to this site, was changed to urban low from employment. And this was left as a 20-acre piece. It was left as employment. There were no plans at the time to develop it. But at this time, there are plans. The developer would like to move forward with a mixed-use development of residential and commercial, different densities. So this is where the subject site is located in the city. Again, there's the site. It's designated currently as employment. The surrounding area is almost entirely urban low, which means that it's appropriate to develop there. It's all. And as you can see here, it all has city water, city sewer, and urban response times for fire and emergency services. Here's the associated zoning, as well as the nearby zoning. There's quite a bit of urban development surrounding the site. And there's the current land use. So because the site is developable, has services, and it is developed as employment, but it's designated employment. However, the Planning Commission felt that it was appropriate to redesignate this as urban low so that it could be developed. It is a relatively small site, and they felt like that was an appropriate use for it. So that action took place on September 23rd when they did, in fact, amend the comprehensive plan to change it to urban low. And this action would be for the council if they choose to receive this action. Any questions for me?
I don't necessarily, well, maybe I do. I don't really have an issue. I guess my concern and question is, as we look at the next, this is contingent upon what's next. There's a PUD also included in this particular area. So I'm just curious what the uses are for that particular PUD in order for this to have even been designated as an employment area in comparison to the other piece of area that we're looking at from the east side of Kelly and Britain. So those are just a few of my questions and piqued my curiosity looking at this. And again, I get it and I understand, but if we already have a PUD in place, the question is still going to be, what are the uses? What could and could not happen in that area in relation to this removing that employment layer for this particular area?
Is it a question for the uses that could be allowed currently under the current zoning?
Under the current PUD 1801, because this is going to be included in, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like it's with it. And I'm referencing also G because G is contingent upon this, on F.
I'll let David answer the
May I?
question.
Okay, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. So the subject site is zoned R1. The PUD 1801 is the land surrounding the subject site.
I understand that. My question still remains as far as what are the uses as far as this PUD is concerned in order for this particular site, R1, to be developed. And I know when we look at these things, we have to look at all of it, not just pieces of it. So that's where my curiosity is pertaining to this particular piece of property, and the fact that we're using one little slice here to take a layer off in order for this to happen. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense of how I'm saying it, but it's just, again, trying to understand the existing PUD in relation to what is to come as far as this layer being removed for this development to take place.
Yeah, great question. Frankly, the existing PUD, that PUD 1801, allows for residential development. So one of the reasons that I believe Planning Commission removed that employment reserve layer is if you read the employment reserve designation, what it tells us is employment layer reserves priority areas for large industrial developments. So I would submit that the current designation on the subject for a large industrial development would be incompatible with the existing zoning in PUD 1801, which would be for residential purposes.
Okay.
I hope that answered your question.
It did, but now I have another question, because now my concern is, why would we take a little piece of property and put it under an employment layer for a large development?
Also a great question. Previously to this action, many months before, the Planning Commission removed the employment layer on the balance of that quarter section. So a separate action, I believe early in the year 2021, the Planning Commission removed the employment layer on the balance of that quarter section. It was a different developer, and so now, excuse me, all that was left was that little island, so to speak, of the employment layer.
So all we need is for a developer to say, this is what we want to do, and we just remove layers.
No, what I would say is at the Planning Commission that there's been a lot of discussion on the employment layer. Here, they felt like based upon it being not adjacent to the highway and it being off the highway and based upon the surrounding uses, that the idea of a large-scale industrial development there wasn't something that they believed to be appropriate. They believed that based upon the surrounding land use pattern, that residential development of some sort was the more appropriate land use pattern.
Me okay. There we go. The Planning Commission, well, they recognize the value, and as David said, that's correct. That entire quarter section was up until not too long ago designated as employment. So that it would certainly have been a good sized site. The Planning Commission is a little uncomfortable holding land without the city having some kind of, sometimes they're uncomfortable using just simply the comprehensive plan as a way to hold the land in a certain state. So when the developer comes forward and they would like to develop it as a residential, Planning Commission and the city doesn't have an interest in the property or hasn't purchased the property, they sometimes feel like they don't have the ability or that it's not appropriate to maintain the land vacant for an unknown period of time when the developer has come forward with the opportunity to develop it as a residential. And it's something, as David said, that they discuss a lot. And at the Planning Commission, I've said a few times that what makes these sites attractive to residential is also what makes them attractive for employment, and that's certainly the case here. It's a good site. It's close to the freeway, but again, the main portion of that quarter section was already changed and zoned, and what we have left here is 20 acres.
Okay. Again, I'm not fully opposed to this, but I do want us to, again, take into account the things that have to take place surrounding this area, and the fact that, again, while we agreed to these things, we're still removing a layer, and how these procedures set precedents for others. And that's the one thing that does concern me, for us to remove this layer for this development. And now we're going to look at other ways that other folks and developers can remove other layers that we may have for protection in order for those places to be developed in the correct manner. So that is my only concern. Not to say this is not a worthy development, but I just want us to be very careful how we remove certain layers and aspects of areas depending on where they are, how they have not been developed, and what people want to do as far as those properties and that land use is concerned compared to our comprehensive plan, although we say it is not the end-all be-all, but it is a guide at the same time of what we would like to see for these particular places. So I appreciate that explanation, and I would like to get some more information on PUD 1801 in relation to this particular area as well. So with that, if someone wants to move forward this approval, no, I can do that. I'm okay with that today. I was going to say I wasn't, but I'm okay with this, and we'll move forward.
Receiving the resolution passes. We'll now move to 11G, which is an ordinance on final hearing to rezone 10723 North Kelly Avenue. This is Councilor Nice.
Yes, we've already heard a little bit about this, so if you would just come up and let us know what's going to happen in relation to us removing that layer.
Yes, so, sorry. This is the PUD that's associated with it. Cindy, do you have the site plan that we had on this? There we go. So this is a mixture of single-family residential, perhaps some duplex, and then multifamily on the corner there. Again, this is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Staff did recommend approval. There were 3 TEs, all of which we agreed to, and Planning Commission did provide a recommendation of approval that was unanimous. And there is no protest. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions for this. With this, I'll go ahead and move for approval, and I wanted to re-emphasize that this was contingent upon the previous approval.
We have a speaker.
Oh.
Hello, it's me again.
Hello.
I actually want to speak on F and G.
Okay.
Joyer, Mr. Box, can you come back up, please? My understanding from what I'm listening to on what you're proposing on F and G, and you're showing the plan, whatever it is, right there, it says employment, right?
So, the law in Oklahoma is strange in that comprehensive plans for cities over 200,000 in population, comprehensive plans are not within the purview of the city council. So, these items are on essentially for informational purposes, as strange as that may seem. But the Planning Commission of the City of Oklahoma City is the only body that has the legal authority to modify the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan was modified in September, removing that layer. And so as of September 23rd, 2021, this site was designated as urban low under the comprehensive plan. As such, the PUD before then, the Planning Commission, now the council, is fully compliant with the urban low intensity LUDA under the comprehensive plan.
Okay. My understanding is it says employment, right?
It did on September 22nd.
Okay. Can you go back one, please? To the site plan. That up there in the corner, upper right-hand corner, is that not retail?
That is multifamily.
No. This here is multifamily. What is, you were talking about retail and stuff within this plan, right?
No, multifamily.
I heard specifically said multifamily and retail.
I don't believe I said that, but that would have been a mistake.
Someone was saying multifamily and retail.
It wasn't me.
Okay. As part as this.
I said Mr. Butler may have said that.
Yes. Okay. I wasn't sure who said it. Okay. And I go back to the infrastructure. How much further out are we going to build these homes with all this development and stuff? We keep building out and out and out. You got Kelly and Hefner Road. How many vehicles is that area going to be able to handle? Have y'all done that study?
So the Oklahoma City Council passed impact fee ordinance several years ago. Every single building permit is required to pay an impact fee that goes into a fund that is deployed for traffic-related measures. Kelly Avenue has recently been improved in this area, as well as Hefner, I believe. And so here, the maps that Mr. Butler went through, all of the infrastructure is in place. It's got urban level of service for sewer, water, fire, police, all of those things, in large part.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about the streets.
Hey, Joy, I'm giving you a lot of leeway here and discretion. You have 3 minutes of comments,
Okay.
and it's not really to question people, but go ahead and ask your question, but you need to wind it up pretty quickly.
That is my question, is the more we build out, the infrastructure, I keep bringing up, the infrastructure is not going to be able to handle it. And then you got people that live out there that's will constantly complain because if there's an accident, say on Kelly, there's an accident on that, the police, fire, tow trucks, whatever's got to get to that area.
So the street network.
If you don't mind, I would say.
Just 1 second, please. I completely agree with what you're saying. We've gone through an unprecedented growth in the last 10 years with an additional 100,000 people, and several of us in our wards are feeling a lot of pressure because of the additional building. I will say this, that we have a great comprehensive plan, and previous to its adoption, which Jeff, was that 2017, 2018 Plan OKC was adopted? 15? Yeah, prior to that, we had not amended the comprehensive plan. It went back to 1978, and so we're always kind of having to tinker with it. And so that may be something that comes before the Planning Commission and the City Council more and more, because we are having this unprecedented growth. And I would submit to you that that's a good problem, not a bad problem. We just need to be on the front end of it instead of the back end. Thank you.
If
Councilor
I may,
Nice?
with that being in Ward 7, I will say right now there is a street widening project happening right on that road in that particular area. And the only reason I am comfortable, while I said previously, and I did not say in this is already zoned R1. So there was really no reason to put an employment layer on it in the first place. But at the same time, it does set a type of precedence for other places that are and have that layer. But for this, we're not changing the zoning. It's going to continue to stay R1, although it's going into a PUD that's going to be adjacent to an existing PUD. But therefore, it will be able to accommodate, as far as that street widening is concerned, all the way from Kelly. Right now, we have 63rd. We're working on Wilshire, as well as Britton to Hefner. So therefore, it will be able to work in the confines of being able to develop that particular area. I will hope and ask that we make sure that we have more lighting in this particular development, if possible. I don't know how we can add that now or talk about it publicly to figure out how to put that in there. But that is something that I would like to see pertaining to ensuring that we have enough lighting and just that type of security, especially with this being adjacent to a school. And for students who will be participating in activities probably across the street, and families who will probably want to be a part of this adjacent neighborhood for the school that is in proximity to it. And I do want to also mention, and this is what Mr. Kitty and I were going back and forth about, the fact of page 14 of this staff report. It does say if CPA 2021-00010 is denied, denial of application. And to the point of that, of what Mr. Box just said, this language should not have been, it should have been corrected to say if it is denied by Planning Commission and not by the City Council, if in fact we do not have that type of authority over this type of comprehensive plan. So that was where we were going back and forth trying to understand what we can and cannot do pertaining to this comp plan in that particular layer of what we are looking at as far as this is concerned. So unfortunately, that type of us trying to, or me anyway, I don't want to say us, me trying to understand what these things are, how they operate in relation to R1, PUDs, and typology layers, that type of information can be quite confusing in some aspects for us to make those types of decisions and correct decisions and informed decisions as council members to understand what we need to do as far as what's best for this development. So with this, I do again hope that we can continue to have the conversation about lighting as we work through this development and the approval of this application.
Councilwoman, just for the sake of honest communication from me, just want to explain why on the previous vote I voted no and why I'll be doing it again here. It's your concern you raised in your comments about the type of precedent this could set, not just in Ward 7, but across the city. And particularly as it relates to the Vice Mayor's comments about the growth we've experienced in the last decade. We know very specifically from that growth from our affordable housing study that we have 19,400 residents who need a 1 to 2 unit home. And right now we have built, I believe, 21,000 units that are 3 to 5 unit homes, and we've done it largely along the outer rim of the city. So I would suggest that we're not meeting the demand, the supply demand that should come within this economic system. We're not meeting it, and it's led to a lot of the housing insecurity that too many of our residents are facing. So I do not see it necessary to amend the comprehensive plan in this moment. So I just wanted to be very clear on why. So, thank you.
Do we have any other discussions, questions?
I did have
on
one,
this item?
one other concern. It's a small one.
Very briefly, please.
The reason why I bring up this is because of the neighborhoods within the city core is getting forgotten. We keep developing out, we forget the inner core of our city. To Mr. Cooper's concerns about low-income housing. That's really the main concern that I have. We keep building out, and the more we build out, we're forgetting our neighborhoods, especially in Ward 7, just around the hospital.
Any other comments about PUD 1841? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ma'am. I'd entertain a motion and a second if there's. Councilor Nice, would you like to move this item forward? Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have item 11H, which is an ordinance on final hearing to rezone 1721 Northeast 23rd Street. Again, we're back to Ward 7. Councilor Nice.
Yes, has anyone signed up to speak? All right. This is to...
Joy requested to speak. Okay.
This is to request for a permit for mixed-use development, and there are a couple of TEs that are included with this proposal, and with that, I will move for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second, please? You have a problem? Todd, we're having a problem getting a vote from you. Thank you. It is approved. Next, we have item I, which is an ordinance on final hearing to rezone 3108 East Hefner Road. Again, back to you, Councilor Nice.
Yes, has anyone signed up to speak for this one? Okay, thank you. The purpose of this request is to permit a bed and breakfast, and I understand the backstory of this is that this was already operating as such. However, we had to get it in compliance when they wanted to get their permit renewed, if I'm not mistaken. So now we're going through this process to ensure that they are ready for us to come and visit and patron their business. With that, I'll move for approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second, please? The ordinance passes. We are now on item 11J, page 10, and this is an ordinance on final hearing to rezone 2424 North Sarah Road. Councilman Carter.
Do we have anybody signed up to speak?
We do not.
Okay. Seeing that there are no protests and subject to the TEs, I move for approval.
Entertain a second. The ordinance passes. We're now on 11K, and this is an ordinance on final hearing to rezone 1400 Northwest 92nd Street. Councilman Cooper?
I don't believe the applicant is present, are they? No? Okay. Well, it went well at planning, so I would move for approval. I would.
The ordinance passes. We're now on the agenda at page 11, item L and M, and I'm going to turn that over to you, City Manager.
Yes. So on this one, we've got Jason Fairbrush, our Director of Transit and Parking, is here to speak on these items. This is really getting us in line with a change in the state law that was made this last year that we had requested and pushed for. And so I'll let Jason explain this and explain what we're doing with this item.
Yes, so good morning, Vice Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me this morning. Again, Jason Fairbrush, Public Transportation and Parking Director. And yeah, so it's my pleasure to introduce these two items to Council for consideration. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about them both together. They are companion items, if you will, that really allow the Public Transportation and Parking Department, or I should say equip the Public Transportation and Parking Department with the ability to have vehicles towed that are blocking the streetcar as it delivers transit service throughout downtown, and then also recoup the costs for having those vehicles towed. So to get into a few of the details, Item 11L is actually a ordinance amending Chapter 32, Motor Vehicle and Traffic. Really what this ordinance change is asking council to consider is to specify that in addition to the police department, the public transportation and parking director or his or her designee can initiate a tow of an automobile that is blocking the streetcar route. Now, it is limited to just a automobile obstructing the streetcar. Secondly, 32-96 really just specifies that if a vehicle, or the way a vehicle is removed from the streetcar alignment is that it can be towed. So that is Item L, if you will, the proposed ordinance changes there. Item M, again, is an introduction. This is Chapter 60, General Schedule of Fees. And by changing the general schedule of fees or adding to the general schedule of fees, COTPO will be able to recoup, or I should say embark, our costs associated with having that vehicle towed. So it's different, say, than the police department impounding a vehicle where there's charges incurred by the towing company. There's an impoundment fee or administrative charge. All we're simply trying to do is recoup the costs that we incur by having that vehicle removed. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, you'll see these items again on December 21st for a public hearing, January 4th for final hearing.
So basically, this is just a mechanism to remove automobiles that are improperly parked and impeding the flow of traffic. And it's an effort to try to speed that process up.
Right, absolutely.
And this allows them to do it administratively rather than having to wait for police officers.
Yeah.
Any questions from anyone?
Thank you.
It's L. We have a motion and second. Cast your vote. It passes. Then move on to item M, which is the schedule of fees. And I'd entertain a motion in a second. Item M passes. We now find ourselves at item N, which is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Apparently, we've had someone to sign up to speak, but first, are there any requests for deferrals from any of the council members?
I'd like first, depending on who speaks, if you don't mind, that will be my request for deferral.
Okay, so you'd like to hear them speak first? Okay. We have, is it Mike?
Just for Dr. Phillips.
Okay, is it Dr. Robert L. Phillips? and he's here to speak about N1B, which is 2701 Northeast 21st Street. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
I'm good.
Would you state your name and home address, please, sir?
Robert L. Phillips, home address 11307 Burning Oaks Road, Oklahoma City, 73150.
How can we help you, sir?
We're talking about the Bryant Center, and it was a complicated place because I was denied. Well, Humphreys, he gave me permission to develop the property. Then when the next guy came in, he denied it. And so what we're doing now, but we never gave up on it because we still have it. We're in the process of developing it anyway because we're getting ready to go to phase 2. But between phase 1 and 2, when they made it a detour path, people got in and destroyed much of the roof, and about everything I bought and put in there, it was stolen. Even while they were putting an additional road in there, they could not keep that clean, the city couldn't. And so they removed my barriers and everything, and so now people come in from Tecumseh and all over the place to dump. But I have a crew over there right now, and that's what we're going to do it. But I figure that with all of the things that we've had to go through to get to where we are, and all the money I have spent because of the denials, that my barriers were taken away rather than put aside, and now they're calling me about $67,000 to get back. And so what we are asking for, I guess, is, I call Michael my son, but anyway, we're going to need some time, and I don't think what I've been given is enough. We were ready to put the roof on. The people came down from Kansas to do it, but then they made it a detour. So even while we were trying to extend it, people were dumping on the detour. Then they wanted me to clean that up. But right now, what I need is time, number one. And number two, I want to be able to block that off because it's still my property that we developed. There was nothing there before. And we're indicting because when they started damaging all the property around there, they also took the transformers. There were 2 transformers that lit up the area. Now we have nothing to light up the area. So I don't know how to put it because I got people that are working right now. We've cleaned off the front part of it. It's about 9 acres in there that I have. But it's something to help the city, really, especially the children on the northeast side. And so, but.
Dr. Phillips, I know it's on our unsecured list, so were we able to get it secured?
We're working on that. Every time I've secured it, they come back in with better tools than I have to destroy it. The main reason is because they took down my barriers. But I believe that we can get it secured and stay that way if I can put my barriers back up. I really needed to be able to do that.
Okay.
Sir, would you please state your full name and a home address, please?
Mike Chappell. I am the son that he didn't have, nephew. I'm also an employer in northeast sector of Oklahoma City. With regards to what I consider a historical piece of property, it was built in 1956. Dr. Phillips has put a lot of financial support in this with regards to securing the facility. Yes, Councilwoman Nice. As of yesterday, we have 2 individuals out there securing their property, and that's a constant challenge given the location of this property that lacks adequate lighting and also a street that now gives easy access. There is definitely a turnaround in what I consider curb appeal, as there's dozers that have removed trees along the tree lines of the residential area as well as debris. So absolutely a work in progress. It is our understanding that the building has been defined as dilapidated structure due to the roof. There is a section there that is needing some repair, but first and foremost, yes, the facility has been secured. As far as a plan of action, it's going to take some time, and as Dr. Phillips says, the time frame that we assume that may be 30, 60, or 90 days, even that to add a roof to a 30,000 square foot facility, if those of you that are familiar with roofing, is going to be in excess of $500,000. So on top of trying to keep the building secured and keeping curb appeal, there is some financial stress already there. But again, we do appreciate this opportunity to speak before you.
Dr. Phillips, thanks for coming today. If you don't mind, for a second, we're going to hear from Chad, who's a part of our city staff. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And Code Enforcement Superintendent. I had the pleasure earlier today to speak with Dr. Phillips, and he has a fabulous plan. He wants to have a community center there. It could be a great plan for the community. And, all, from what I understand, continues to be privately funded by Dr. Phillips. So, great plan. However, the roof is in pretty dire straits right now. There's definitely daylight coming through it. The building was unsecured at our last visit, and we believe people are continue to enter the property. This time of year especially, you know, as always, we worry about fire. We worry about public safety and loss of life. So always important for us to see them secured and to see that dilapidated building fixed. As far as working with time, I mean, we're always willing, and I expressed to Dr. Phillips this morning, to work with anyone that's willing to rehabilitate a structure in our city or to come in compliance with our code.
Well, it sounds like he's trying to work on this issue diligently.
He is.
And so I guess, how much time can we give him?
Well, if you don't mind, I would like to defer this at least for a month to see where we are and with that plan, and have the plan of action and work through removing it from the unsecured list to also moving it to striking it from our dilapidated, because that's the one thing I don't want, is for us to have to intervene on our city's behalf. But I do understand and know that Dr. Phillips has been trying to work through the challenges for quite a few years of getting this to a place where it can become what it needs to be and once was for the Northeast community. So I will ask that we defer it for a month. I will ask when we get to the unsecured that we only that we do that for 2 weeks. So therefore we can make sure we get that into compliance to figure out, as far as the unsecured portion of it, to get it secure, and therefore work through this plan. And I know we all realize and understand the complications of having help pertaining to builders, contractors, all those things right now. It's just not as easy and quick. But if they're willing to work through that process, I would hope that we would be able to help them through that process as well.
Nikki, would you be comfortable moving that to January 4th, the meeting on January 4th?
January the 4th. So January the 4th is fine for me, and that will be the next time we'll see this on the agenda, unless otherwise stricken from the agenda.
And Chad, it sounds like you're comfortable with that too?
Absolutely.
In that time frame? Okay.
That's for the dilapidated structure.
Correct.
2 weeks.
That's for dilapidated. Well, I would like to defer it to January the 4th. That's item N1B. And to January 4th.
We thank you.
Yes.
Move to defer to January 4th?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I had a comment on item N1A. we deferred it for 2 weeks, but here's what my concern is for this, and it's unfortunate, is this was a home where we had a gentleman perish in this same home just the month before last, and not to say it is not a dilapidated structure, it's just trying to understand as far as just our process of how we care for and do those types of commitments or concerns or whatever the case may be, when you have someone that also perishes in that same home that's dilapidated and may have been the only person of relation to that particular property. So that's been my reservation, and I know that's a lot of different things that can and probably can't be worked through, but it's trying to figure out the best way to, one, make sure it is better for the community or that neighborhood, but also not put that burden and stress on that particular property, because clearly there's going to be a lien on that property if we go in and do the work. So I do have just a couple concerns in that, and I'm just going to ask that I want to work through it and figure it out. I know that's going to be a complicated procedure, but I would like 2 more weeks on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and I guess what you're saying, the complexity and difficulty with it is that we don't have an estate, we don't know who the heirs are because the person's deceased, and so
Yes,
it's complicated.
Correct, and I would hate for us to just go in and do that, just immediately do that kind of work and put that pressure or burden on someone and we don't even know who it is. But I understand, again, that it does need to be secured or whatever the case may be at the same time. So I just ask for 2 weeks on that.
All right, we're going to have a motion to defer this matter, which is N1A, for 2 weeks. And that date is?
December 21st.
December 21st. Thank you.
Thank you.
That deferral is approved. Do we have anybody else signed up to speak on 11N?
No, we don't.
All right, so that moves us to 11N2, which is a resolution declaring structures as dilapidated. I'd entertain a motion in a second. It passes. We're now on to item 11O, which is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Do we have anybody signed up as to O1A through M?
Vice Mayor, I would like to defer O1M for 2 weeks, and that's the unsecured for the one we heard Dr. Phillips speak about.
Okay, so we're talking about O1M, Mary, right?
M as in Mary, yes.
Okay, and you want to defer that?
I'll just, for 2 weeks, as we get that in compliance to make it secured.
It passes. Do we have any other requests for deferrals? If we don't, we'll move on to O2, which is the resolution declaring the above structures as unsecured. Todd? It passes. We'll now turn to page 12, agenda item 11P, which is a public hearing regarding abandoned buildings. Do we have any requests for deferrals as to item 11P?
I have one pertaining to the other deferral from the dilapidated, item P1C.
P1C.
I would like to defer that for 2 weeks, please.
2 weeks?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a motion and a second? Did you get it? Good. All right. We'll now turn to item 11P2, which is the resolution declaring the above buildings as being abandoned. I'd entertain a motion a second, please. It's moved and seconded. Please cast your vote. It passes. We now move to item 11Q1, which is a resolution approving the request for salary continuation for Major Randy Gonzalez. I'm told we do not need executive session, so I will entertain a motion and second on that item. Cast your votes. The resolution is approved. We're now at item 11R1, which is a resolution authorizing and directing the municipal councilor to enter into an agreed settlement and journal entry of judgment. Just so everyone knows, this pertains to a condemnation proceeding. And if there's no questions, I'd entertain a motion and a second for its approval. The resolution passes. We are now on item S, which are claims recommended for denial. Do we have anyone signed up to speak? B was deferred. Okay. B was deferred earlier today, so we're only looking at item A. If there's no questions, then I'd entertain a motion and second. The recommendation for denial as to item S1A passes. We will now turn to page 13 of the printed agenda, 11T. We find ourselves at claims recommended for approval. And we have items A through D, which we can take with one motion. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. It passes. We are now on to item 12, which is comments from council. We'll start with Ward 1.
Nothing today, sir. Thank you.
Ward 2?
Yes, thank you. I do have a few items. I'm going to read from a post from Instagram that OKC Beautiful did. This is Cleveland Elementary School. I love this news so much. This was just from a couple days ago where Cleveland Elementary's garden lessons concluded for the fall semester. December's theme was veggies and vitamins, including a cooking and tasting lesson. And this was where over 300 students participated in an interactive session where they learned about the nutritional value of the veggies they've been growing all fall. Students watched a cooking demonstration from garden educator Ms. Mossman and got to sample some of the veggies grown this year. On the menu, a stir fry made of kale, bok choy, carrots, scallions, chard, broccoli, spinach, and garlic. This is what the kids grew. I just think that is so wonderful. And it was, I just think that's great. Some of them got to try these veggies for the very first time. Like they had never had those foods before. Following the tasting, they documented their experience and had the opportunity to be interviewed by food critics. When students get to participate in growing healthy foods, they also get a sense of ownership and delight in eating those foods. One student even said, quote, "Kale is my favorite," end quote. And then another one said, quote, "The stir fry was one of the best things I have ever eaten." So I just thought that was so cool. Again, Cleveland Elementary calls Ward 2 home right there on 23rd near Villa, right across the street from Ward 6. Another thing I wanted to just discuss was, if you haven't had an opportunity yet to visit Ward 2's Brick Garden, I would highly encourage folk to do that. It is at 4027 North Classen, and they also had an Instagram post I wanted to share. It was about Christmas trees and sustainability. You can go to the Brick Garden and you can actually purchase a tree from there, and here's what they had to say. "We all know that artificial trees aren't sustainable. The manufacturing and shipping process results in increased carbon emissions. Most are made in China and shipped across the Pacific. They aren't recyclable, and they add more plastic to the landfills where they never break down. They are made from PVC plastics, heavy metals, and possibly lead. Cut Christmas trees, however, and this is what you can find at the Brick Garden, support tree farmers and help them maintain healthy tree forest. Tree forests provide a carbon sink. For every one Christmas tree that you buy, farmers plant 1 to 3 seedlings in its place, and that's according to the National Christmas Tree Association. Who knew? That means more trees to fight climate change and to provide more vital benefits for people and nature, like clean air and water, wildlife habitat, and soil. So after Christmas is over, you can repurpose your tree and set it out to become a winter habitat for birds. Another sustainable tree option are potted trees. Norfolk pine can be kept indoors year-round. It can be decorated with lightweight fairy lights and paper ornaments. Brick Garden has those Norfolk pines in tabletop and or on floor sizes. So if you want a more traditional tree shape, tabletop or landscape size, dwarf Alberta spruce can be enjoyed through Christmas and then planted in your landscape. I highlight those two just because I think it is incredible to see in Ward 2, whether it's Cleveland elementary students doing what they can to learn about nutrition that's going to sustain them into adulthood, or it's Brick Garden thinking about, well, sustainability for the environment and for our city ultimately in that way. I think that's wonderful. I just wanted to share those. A couple other items. I wanted to mention that last December 1st was World AIDS Day, and that is why I'm wearing this red ribbon. I just wanted to read some troubling statistics as a result of this historic global pandemic, and I think it's something we should all be mindful of, which is, unfortunately, during the pandemic, regular testing for HIV/AIDS has decreased. What we have learned is that and I'm just reading from an article now on CNN, in the United States, the number of people living with HIV is actually expected to rise after a period of decreased testing and treatment during this pandemic. That is scary. And it's scary because we've made so much progress in the public health arena to move us from an era of stigma to an era of people protecting their bodies. And I just want to remind people what they can be doing to protect yourself. Remember, if you, to quote a very famous drag queen, if you can't love yourself, how in the heck are you going to love somebody else? She usually follows that up with, can I get an amen? But this is so important. No one will love your body more than you will. You've got to protect it. And that's not a lesson we're teaching our kids. In fact, we barely say the word sex education in K through 12. So allow me. The best way to prevent transmission of HIV is to practice safer sex. That is according to the Joint United Nations Program on HIV/AIDS. The ways in which this virus spreads is through penetrative sex, needle sharing, and blood transfusions. This also is true that it can find itself spread from mother to child during pregnancy or breastfeeding. Those are the truths, not the rumors that began in the 1980s. And unfortunately, we know that when HIV and AIDS first appeared in that time period in the 1980s, I'm just pulling up this moment here to quote to you, just so you know what we're really up against. Sorry, let's pull this up here. Give me just one moment. Yes. So from 1981, I'm now reading from The Atlantic. From 1981, when the disease was first reported in the national press, though undiagnosed cases likely existed even earlier, to 1987. This was the year that a new advocacy group called ACT UP was founded. And by the time it was founded in 1987, when I'm 5 years old, thousands of Americans had already died of AIDS-related complications. Their illness and deaths were shrouded in shame and sensational media coverage. Although by 1987, the modes of HIV transmission had been properly identified, as I just identified them for us, and the initial medical designation, this is what we called AIDS, by the way, gay-related immune deficiency. Even though they had changed that official designation to acquired immune deficiency syndrome, AIDS, AIDS was still widely believed to be a gay disease. It was commonly dubbed the, quote, gay cancer and the gay plague, at a time when sexual minorities faced vicious forms of legal discrimination and extra-legal violence. What that means is LGBT people had no constitutional protections. We were not protected under the Constitution. Literally, we're not protected under the Constitution. And this was the language that was floated around by us. You multiply that by a lack of sexual education in our schools, and that's how you can get to 2021, where even though public health providers have done everything they can to promote condom use, the prescription drug Truvada, which someone can take daily to prevent HIV. I want to say that one more time. You can take a pill daily to prevent HIV. That's how far we've come. And we came that far because of this group, ACT UP, in the 80s. It was a group of LGBT activists who literally shut down the stock market exchange, literally went and shut it down to make sure that they could cut by 20% the cost for prescription drugs from those who were suffering from HIV/AIDS, who were also disproportionately of color and disproportionately lower income. So we have come so far now where we have a pill that will prevent us from acquiring HIV/AIDS. We have condom usage. And we have those words that if you can't love yourself, can't love anybody else. So these are ways to protect your body. And I want to speak that into existence because I'm really, really concerned that in this pandemic, we're actually seeing a decreasing in testing. I get tested every 3 months. I've done that for 20 years. And I will do it till the day I die, which, because of the knowledge I have, won't be too soon, God willing. So I just wanted to speak to that, and I also just want to speak to any healthcare provider in Oklahoma City who has been doing this work and saving lives. I see you, I love you, and so many of us do. We have to end this stigma. We have to end the stigma that this is associated with just queer people. We have to end the stigma that you can't go get tested regularly. And we have to move from a place of fear to a place of love. Love for your body, love for other people's autonomy in their bodies, and love ultimately for community so that we don't spread these sorts of things throughout our community. This should hit us harder than ever now that we're living through a pandemic where we've been seeing spread, right, through coughing of COVID. So again, I just want to say much love to every service provider out there who's been doing this work. If what I just said made you uncomfortable, then it might be time to start asking, how do we work to remove this shame? It should not be a shameful thing for us to talk about our bodies and our health and the public safety of our community. It should be priority number one. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. A couple things today. So just want to remind everybody that if you follow the police department's social media feeds, they're putting out warnings and information regarding the uptick in auto burglaries as well as porch pirates. It's the season for that. So please take your stuff in, lock your cars, and report all crimes. That helps our officers catch a thief and try and bring those numbers down. So it's super important. I had the privilege of on Monday of last week doing a tour of our Southwest Briefing Station. It's our newest police briefing station. It's an exceptional build. It has been up for several years, but it was my first opportunity to see it. And also participate in a ride-along with Officer Taylor that evening and witness our finest in action. I am never ceased to be amazed at the professionalism and the dignity that our officers treat our citizens with, whether they're the victim or the alleged offender, and the efforts that they go to that end. It is better than what I could do if I were in their shoes, for sure. So I'm very proud of all that I saw, and I encourage all of our council members to participate in those tours and ride-alongs. If you have not done so lately, or if you've never done so, I really strongly encourage you to do that. It's so important, and it's such a different perspective than what you might get otherwise. Being out there on the streets and in the cars with them, it's really impressive. Another kind of pride moment where the police are concerned is the community outreach. Obviously, it's that time of year where we really focus on the kids, and that's so important as we raise our kids, and so many of the adverse childhood experiences, our officers interact with them as those things are going on, and the Shop with a Cop program and the donations that our citizens give our police department to hand out to these kids, whether it's bicycles or toys or whatever the case may be, our officers are really utilizing those opportunities to try and do the best that they can for these kids and these experiences that are happening to them. And I'm just really proud of what our citizens contribute to the department to make it possible for them to do that, as well as what our officers are doing out there in the field with that. Another thing that we talk about all the time is staffing for our police department and the safety of not only of our citizens but our officers. So we've got lateral academies coming up with a $5,500 sign-on bonus, as well as academies, regular academies for 2022, and we encourage everyone to apply. You've heard today a lot of wonderful things going on in Oklahoma City with our arts and our development and the wonderful place it is to live, and people continue to move here, and we hope that new police officers will as well, and that you will encourage our young people to participate and to consider law enforcement as a career. It's very rewarding, and I'm very proud of all of them. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I saw George Fina out here earlier, and I just wanted to thank him and actually thank the whole Oklahoma City Retired Firefighters Association for their dinner last night. It was their annual Christmas dinner, and it's always fun. Just a good time and enjoyable being able to hang out with people that really dedicated their lives to the safety of our citizens. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to also reiterate the enjoyment we had last night with the retired firefighters at their banquet. It's always a joy to see Mr. Fina and as well as the other retired firefighters that have served our city. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, y'all, his name was Spud, Mr. Spud. He was the oldest retired firefighter there, and he started with the department in 1948. And he is 94 years young. So for him to be so spunky as he was last night, to see him, that was really, why we do this, to see the people who have been able to serve our city for centuries or years or decades, should I say, not centuries. He's not a century yet, but at least for decades, in order for us to have that type of pride as far as our fire department is concerned. It definitely speaks volumes. And to Ms. Darla, who sung, she was very enjoyable, and her jokes were amazing as far as Christmas is concerned. But speaking of centenarians, I do know one, and I want to wish her a belated birthday. We've celebrated her at Lincoln Park Clubhouse on this past Saturday. Her name is Juanita Davis, and she turned 100. And the reason I bring her name up is because she has been a pillar in our community. And she was the person who established Metropolitan Daily Living Centers, which is a senior adult daycare. And she started that with two people. And it is across from the Jeltz area, Jeltz Senior Living, which is located off of about 13th and Lottie. But this young lady had 7 children she was raising at the time, but found it necessary to also care for others. So I think that's what the most important piece of her story is. And they also honored her with an honorary sign topper on 10th and Kate. So it's really wonderful to be able to see people have their flowers while they can still smell them and be able to celebrate her legacy. And if I'm not mistaken, they said she had 150 grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all, just, there was so many family members, and it's so fun to connect the dots of who is from that lineage of people that you already know. And it's like, I had no idea that you were a part of that lineage, but clearly speaking to the woman, I understood why. I know those folks and the things that they're doing. And also one of her grandsons is the owner of the vegan place where we go eat sometimes, Cafe 420, which is located right near here. But again, it was great to celebrate this woman, and she also has another location that's behind the new Homeland on 36 in Lincoln. So there is another Metropolitan Daily Living Centers that her daughter, Jackie Parks, now took the reins and is operating and ensuring that we have a place for our seniors during the day to have activities and to be cared for. So I'm grateful for her leadership and for her to be committed to our city and our community in a time when something like that was definitely needed for the folks that are within our city. I know they probably don't want to hear this thank you, but I want to thank Judge Glidewell and Judge James with our municipal courts. And the reason I want to thank them is because we had a gentleman, and he's here, Mr. Kirk, talk about our homeless population and having some type of reflector bands or something that shows that they are present and that we can see them. And I got a phone call from one of the judges, and she said, we heard about it and we bought some. We want to make sure that Mr. Kirk has these so we can distribute them to our community. Put your arm up, let's see him. There they go. He has one on right now. But this is what community looks like. So I'm just grateful for them. And I know they probably did not want to hear a thank you for that, but it warrants a thank you when people think enough and hear what the concerns are and want to help meet that need. So I personally want to say thank you to them publicly for their commitment and even just hearing the story and wanting to help. Speaking of, I know I talked about our seniors earlier. Senior prom is next week. If you want to come out and hang out with us, I'm going to hang with the seniors, and it's going to be fun. And we also have a few other things that are happening. One is Pitts Park, our Pitts Recreation Center. I talked about this last time. Our OU moms were helping to feed some of the neighbors in that community, but now we need toys for the toy drive. So if you can help, please drop off those toy donations at the Pitts Recreation Center as well as Fade Up Barbershop. And the goal is to have 500 toys for our community to be able to distribute to our young people. And we talk about the safari lights that are happening at the zoo. So if you still have not been able to view them, please do not miss this opportunity. I talked about 1 million people that have visited our zoo or close to. We're about to hit that. It's because of things like this. So if you haven't seen it, it is definitely a sight to see. And we also talk about small businesses as we continue to support and we look at our youth sales tax and the different things and the commitments of retail and businesses in our communities. I want to continue to ask that we support Kindred Spirits on Black Fridays. They have every Friday small businesses that they highlight, and you can come and patron those businesses. So please consider doing that and finding your Christmas gift. And if you have not seen that Homeland mural, it is officially complete. It's officially complete. And we had a good ceremony for that on this past Sunday, first Sunday at the Homeland on Northeast 36 in Lincoln. Although I do want to also, at the same time, congratulate the artist for two things. One, for his commitment of showing the beauty of Blackness in our community, but two, because he became a father on Sunday as well. So he has a little artist in the making. So we want to definitely extend our congratulations to him. And the reason I bring up that art is because there have been many reflections of personal stories because of that, where a community has not been able to see themselves depicted in art. But this brings those ideas to the forefront that we matter, we exist. There was I understand a story of a young lady who is a single mom who referenced the mural of a mother holding her daughter, and she felt seen. So it's those kind of pieces of art, as we talked about earlier, within the art scene and things that are coming that resonate differently with everybody. So I'm grateful that we're able to show things like that for our community and that commitment to the people in our city and meeting a need at the same time, bringing fresh food access to a community that has been waiting too long for this need to be fulfilled. So I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of that.
Thank you very much. Thanks to Police Chief Gorley, this past week and this week, the council and certain staff members were invited to see a new unit that we have called reality-based training. And the primary function of reality-based training is to engage in scenario-based de-escalation and tactics training for all frontline and uniform officers. And the unit was just started in February of this year. I didn't know what to expect. When I got there, the instructor staff consisted of 8 officers. Lieutenant Douglas Grady, who gave an outstanding presentation, Master Sergeant Jeffrey Yust, Sergeant Trevor Waters, Sergeant Logan Prather, Master Sergeant Kent Cochran, Sergeant Joseph Frank, Captain Tom Krug, Major Ryan Boxwell, and of course Chief Gorley. And the point of that is that this is a unit that we have committed a lot of resources to. We have less lethal coordinators that are there, directors of training that were there, and I was just thoroughly impressed with how this procedure worked, what we're trying to do to be on the forefront with something new and on the cutting edge. And so I'd finally like to thank Captain Valerie Littlejohn, who helped set this up with Chief Gorley. She had channels 4, 5, 9, and channel 25 there. And one of the things that most impressed me was one of the news services that night on the news said, this is cutting edge. This is something new. This is something that other cities are taking a look at and are very interested in. And so I'm proud of this new unit. I'm proud of the instructors. And I want to thank Chief Gorley for letting us participate in this reality-based training. Thank you. Citizens to be heard, which is item 13 on the agenda. And we have Joy Reardon signed up to speak.
Yep. It's me again.
Thank you.
I was at a convention on Friday called the Abilities Expo. Very few people know about it. It's for the, not disabilities, but the abilities of people. It was in Dallas, Texas. I can definitely say, without a shadow of a doubt, that Oklahoma City is light years ahead when it comes to ADA than what Dallas and Fort Worth are. Their sidewalks, the crossings and stuff like that are just not there, not even close to what we've accomplished. What I would like to do is bring still the Abilities Expo. I have been in contact with the people who run it to bring it to Oklahoma City. I have done as much as I'm able to do. If I could get some help, then that would be nice. My other issue on thing that I signed up for is these scooters. They are getting even worse. And the police aren't able to do anything. If y'all could please look into it and give the police more authority. My understanding is you have to have a driver's license to rent them, which by definition, to have a driver's license to do that, that entails making it a motor vehicle. Am I right or wrong? By that definition of that, the police can write tickets because people are leaving them in the curb cutouts, in the middle of the sidewalks, making it difficult for the ADA community. If we want to get better for the ADA community, something has to be done about that. And it also has on the scooters, on all of them now, do not ride on sidewalk. And more people are riding on the sidewalk because, quote unquote, they say that they're scared to ride in the street because of cars.
30 seconds, please.
Yeah, that's all I really have today. But the biggest thing is if we can get the Abilities Expo here, that would be really nice.
What is the expo called? I couldn't hear you.
It's called the Abilities, not Disability, but the Abilities Expo. It brings in people from Quantum, Permobil, all the manufacturers for the ADA community. Their biggest thing is they said that there was no market in Oklahoma City like there is in Dallas, and I beg to differ.
That's a great idea. I hope you can talk them into coming to Oklahoma City, and if we can help in any way, you please let us know, okay?
If y'all can get in contact with me, I can put you in contact with them.
Thanks for being here today.
Vice,
We appreciate you.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Is that maybe putting this on the radar of the Visit OKC? Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Because we can get people from Kansas City, from Arkansas, from Kansas, maybe from New Mexico, these other surrounding cities. Even get people from Texas, now that we're getting the money to run the Amtrak North. There you go. Thank you. Y'all have a blessed day. See y'all in 2 weeks.
Next citizen to be heard is Taylor Green on homelessness. Taylor, would you state your name and address, please? And thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is Taylor Green. I live at 6816 Rivergate Lane. And I'm here on behalf of Putnam City North High School to represent our Generation Citizen Project, which is homelessness. And I bear the question today of why is a teenager here having to talk about homelessness? Why someone who literally next hour has a test for English has to be here to talk about why is there a problem for me or for other friends of mine and other people who need a home. And now for me, homelessness isn't just what we see and what numbers that can comply. For 15% of students at Putnam City North High School, they have either have experienced homelessness or at least know a friend who has. And for me, that's just an unbearable number. For a kid to not know where he has to go eat, and for only one meal a day, which is around lunchtime, around 11 o'clock, for only one meal to be served, I feel that's not enough. But for these people and for our friends today that we represent, I feel like there needs to be more actions towards of putting a name to these people and to putting a face toward all these problems. Because if we cannot literally go down the street and drive past council, go past these streets that we drive by every day without saying homelessness, it is more of a problem than I feel like we put onto it. And I feel personally that with these names and that with these people that we need to represent, that there has to be, there's more of that, the idea that people need to be represented, and that there needs to be a name for these people to be represented. That there's not just them being alone and through their fight of not knowing where to go, not knowing where they can go eat, not knowing where where they can sleep. It should just be, there needs to be love for these people. And like Dr. Cooper said, that these people need to be represented through everything that we do. And that I believe that what I'm here asking for y'all today is that to put not just numbers to these maps, to maps 4, to these housing first policies, that they're not just numbers and percentages, that there's someone's daughter, it's someone's son, it's someone's mom that's going through it. And that I appreciate everything y'all do, everything that y'all come up here and y'all do take your time out. And I would just hope and pray and ask that we help these people and that we help people every day that need these basic necessities. So thank you.
Where do you go to school?
I go to school at Putnam City North, and that's who I came to represent today. They voted me somehow, I don't know why, but I got to represent them. So I thank y'all for letting me speak today, and I thank them too.
Hey, we really appreciate you being here today and come back and see us.
Oh, always.
Thank you.
Speaking of coming back to see us, I did something I rarely do. I read what we call the Journal of Council Proceedings, right? You know, it's the record of what the previous council meeting was. And I'm so glad you all were here, because at the previous council meeting, you might recall during those items from council remarks, though who knows who listens to me anymore up here. But I mentioned you all. I mentioned Putnam City. I mentioned Dove Academy in Putnam City and your Generation Citizen class and the Gay Straight Alliance class as well. And I mentioned that your concerns were not only about lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer rights, but sustainability, racism, and first and foremost, mental health. And we know that that dovetails into things like job insecurity and homelessness and these things. I say that to say, I want you to know that even when you aren't here because you got that English test, that's why, I know, I have to go grade them after this. That's true. I just want you to know that when you all reach out to your council members the way that you all did, that's an opportunity for us to be your voice on this council. And now your voice is documented in city history. The next thing I want to say is, you might talk with, I don't know who we might connect them with, but we just implemented, you mentioned maps, we just implemented the subcommittee community that will deal with the housing first as it relates to homelessness. I would encourage you to talk with someone here at staff to find out when those meetings, because I think we're just now starting to figure out when those meetings are going to take place regularly, and maybe send a representative from the Gay Straight Alliance, from Generation Citizen, to at least attend one of those meetings and share with them not just what you shared with us right now, but put names to people. I'm not talking about calling them out like this is the person who needs help, but maybe if they do need the connecting to those services, but to be able to say, here are the specific needs around Putnam City, and advocate for your people, right? Advocate for them, help be that voice, and also have this dialogue back and forth between those committee members to find out what we're doing, to find out how they can help address those needs. So I'm glad you made it into the history part, but the work continues. So that's just my guidance there. So thank you.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say, Taylor, thanks for being here for so long, because you get to speak right at the very end. Is the friend with you today? Is that?
Oh yeah, this is Josh, and then this is Mr. Baker. He actually runs the Gay Straight Alliance stuff. He does all of that. Yeah, he's a great teacher.
What is your name?
This is Aaron Baker.
Okay, and then behind you is? Thanks for coming. We really appreciate y'all. All right. Next up is Ronnie Kirk. Ronnie. Ronnie, can you hear me? Ronnie,
Yes,
can you hear
sir.
me? Before you state your name and address, I want to tell you that during the pandemic, I thought a lot about you, and I was worried about you and wondering if we'd ever get to see you again, because I think you have a great heart, and so it's good to see you again.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Today, I want to come down and personally thank the 2 judges that made it possible for us to get these bans. I also bought an extra copy of the newspaper to give to the 2 judges. In the newspaper, I have an article in the newspaper. As well, I have some inserts that I like for everybody to read. You know, I watched a documentary with John Lewis, Get in the Way. He was talking about guns, what we should do to try to get control of guns. But today I really came down. I'm still want to adopt that every school gym, where the school's been closed for almost 4 years. The gym was built to withstand a F5 tornado. My organization is willing to go and open up the gym when a tornado comes. We'll clean it up and we'll feed them if people come. I just really would like to be able to do that for our community. You know, some of the things I come down here and talk about is for the whole state, not just for Ward 7, not just for individual ward. It's for the whole city. And I think it's really important that I'm gonna stand up and fight for everybody. I'm concerned about all races of people. You know, the armbands, that's perfect. When it's dark outside, people walking, most of them got dark clothes on. When you make a right-hand turn, you can easily hit them. If it's raining or misty, you don't know if you hit a dog or a person. So thank you. Thanks a lot. Y'all have a good day.
Which is we are adjourned.
Finally got you, son. You missed it. I'm in search and rescue.